Hi everyone, today I want to talk about list comprehensions. List comprehensions give you a very convenient way of creating new lists. First, let's look at a list that's not created by a list comprehension. This is a list literal, where we just have square brackets and we put the numbers and we separate each number by a column, and this will create us a list that contains all these numbers, unfiltered list. Now I want to filter this list, and I want to filter it in a way that I want to create a new list that contains only the numbers that are smaller than 10. And we can do this with a for loop, where we create a new empty list like this, and then we loop through our unfiltered list and we check for each number if it is smaller than 10. And if it is smaller than 10, then we want to append that number to our empty list. Yeah. This will go through for loop, will go through unfiltered list from left to right. It will assign each value it encounters to item. It will check if item is smaller than 10, and if that is the case, it will append it to the new list. If it's not the case, it will do nothing and the value will be skipped. Now let's look at how that worked. We see, okay, it kept 5, it kept 1, it skipped 312, it kept 4, it kept 3, 6, and so forth. Now list comprehensions give us a tool to do exactly the same thing, but a little faster and more better looking. And the way to do that is, again, using square brackets, but we'll use a for loop within these square brackets with an if condition. And this looks like that. So we have item for item in unfiltered list if item smaller 10. Now let's talk about this construction. We have this name here on the left, and we have this for loop which assigns each item that it encounters in this list iteratively to the name item, and then it appends that that name to this list that we're creating with this list comprehension. This if statement then checks if item is smaller than 10, and it will only put this item in this list if this if condition evaluates to true. Only then will it append the item. Now let's see how that worked. And it worked exactly the same way. Now, as I said, this has two advantages. One, it's faster. And it's faster just because for loops are a rather inefficient way of going through a list in Python. This one is handled on a C level, and it will be faster. The list comprehension, that is. Second, if you're into this, it's list comprehensions you can mostly fit on one line. If you like to have as little code as possible, it's only one line. It's easy to maintain, and it's fairly easy to read also. In my opinion, it's fairly intuitive. But filtering is not the only use case for list comprehensions. We can also apply any kind of expression to this item before appending it. So for example here, we take item, multiply it by 2, and again we loop through the same list. Now we have multiplied list, and each value in this unfiltered list was multiplied by 2. So we can apply any expression that we want to this item before appending. Now I'll show you a little more exotic use case, because as I showed before, because strings are sequences, we can loop through strings. And what I want to do now is, from this string, I want to only keep the characters that are not vowels. So for that, I will set up this additional list that will contain all the vowels. I actually cheat a little bit and copy this list from my other desktop. These are the vowels, and now I want to filter the string. And if you don't understand this construction right here, you should go back to my video about strings. But for now, we'll leave it at that and focus on the list comprehension. So we will loop through each character in this string, but we will only append the character to the new list if the character is not contained in vowels. So this one, again, it goes through the characters, and then for the character, it checks, is character in this list vowels? And this expression is true if character is indeed in this list. But we want it to be true, so we want to keep all the characters that are not in this list. So we need to invert the Boolean statement with a not keyword. So if character is not in vowels, then we want to append this character to our new list. And the problem with that is that we get a list from this list comprehension. List comprehensions always give you a list. They don't give you a string. So to get back to a string, we need to use the join method on an empty string to bring this list that we get back into a string. Now let's see how that worked. And as we see, all the vowels, here the I is gone, the O is gone, this O is gone. So this worked quite nicely. Now you can also use this for loop within a list comprehension with any kind of object that you can for loop through. Also, for example, a range function. So x for x in range 5, 1. This will give us a list from 5 to 9. However, this construction is stupid. And it's stupid because range is already easily convertible to a list. So we can simply do list range 510. And I made a typo here, but anyway, so this is the same, exactly the same thing. But with ranges, we can then do more complex things within list comprehensions. So we can, for example, take x times y for x in range 510, and we can combine for loops. So we can put another for loop here for y in range 0 to 5. And this now, how long do you think this list will be? Well, the length is actually the length of this range function times this range function. So if we look at this length list, it's 25, lang range 510 times length of range, oopsies, range 05, 25. And that's because we go from left to right with this type of expression. So first, we go here with this for loop, we go into the range function, and we start at 5. So we assign x to 5. Then we go to this for loop, and then we assign y to 0. Then we don't go back to the first for loop, but this loop is still looping. So we still have x equal 5, and we had y equals 0. Now we go back. We append first this this expression here, where we have 5 times 0 appended to the list. Then y now equals 1. So we take 5 times 1. Now y equals 2. 5 times 2, and so forth. And once we're finished with this for loop here, we go back to this loop and we go to the next value. We assign x to 6. Now 6 times 0, 6 times 1, 6 times 2, and so forth. And this creates us this list. Now these were some simple use cases for list comprehensions, and I hope this video could get you started on using list comprehensions by yourself. They are very useful, they are very efficient, and they look nice. So I hope this got you started nicely, and I see you in the next video.